order this town board budget workshop, August 27, 2025, at roughly 4 p.m. We are remote and virtual, so we've got a Zoom running, as with all of our meetings. Instructions to join via Zoom are at the top of the agenda, and we are also streaming to Facebook and to YouTube. So with that, I would like to ask Councilor Bollinger to lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We kick things off. Thank you, Mr. Duffy, for coming to present your budget for the assessment department.
Okay, so if you take the 2025 budget and shift everything over to 2026, except for the personnel, I'm done.
Great.
William, I'm sending you his budget right now.
Thank you, Carrie.
Any questions?
Straight up. Is there anything that we did put in here that or something?
I'm just taking a guess as to what my replacement salary is going to be, but it's just, that's up to you.
Thank you.
Is there anything in this that, like, you're able to hold off on an increase this year, but like next year, we're gonna have to replace, or expecting any prices of anything to go up?
Now, if you remember, for the longest time, there was 7 years in a row where I did the same thing here. And finally inflation kicked in and we had to go and adjust it, but I think this is like the third, maybe, third year with no changes.
Good deal. Good deal. We're lucky that the printing bill is not ever gonna.
No.
Since 95.
Yeah, it's been pretty boilerplate for the last 3 years. I mean, just, straight carbon copy for the last few years, other than personnel.
Yeah. So. Like made easy. Now, if you want, I could sing karaoke, but.
Yeah, many times.
No, you really don't want to hear me sing. That is not one of my strong talents.
I think it's. Or no, maybe 4. Oh, so with the bar, we're currently with 3 members, right? Or 4?
Correct.
Okay, 3 members. Okay, so that's,
Fourth person is interested, and we're gonna try to find a fifth person so we can get.
so what I'll say is, if we still put it out, can you just get with Duffy to make sure that we're posting? We'll put out town news, we'll put it out on the website and everything, that we are, we will entertain 2 more people, we really are looking for 2 people to appoint if we're gonna do that. But yeah, no questions for you?
Thank you.
Boring, huh?
Thank you.
Okay.
Good, that gave me even more time to talk.
That was, that was our goal.
No.
Well, we might-
15 minutes tops. We had this
Do you know
conversation.
what Rob's estimated arrival is?
I told Mr. Cushing to make sure he arrives early.
Okay. Perfect. We'll see what his interpretation of growth.
I'm working on that right now. It will be 5 o'clock.
Sounds about right.
That's probably okay. Tom, let me know.
So I'm gonna start with a couple of the items not addressed in the budget for myself are personal services for the zoning board and the planning board. I'm hoping next year we can involve the chairs a little more into their budget reviews. The personal services is gonna be dictated by the board. But there's things in there such as engineering, legal, that they could review and we could help them, assist them, but having that kind of chairperson input for their board directly, I think would be beneficial. So I just want to start off by saying right now, the revenue for 2025, we did have some money that was from permits that was brought in December of last year, but as the comptroller shows, for 2025, we have a revenue of $219,000. And I'm prefacing that is with the planning and development should not be considered a revenue generating department. However, we are constantly evaluating our fees to ensure projects and tasks are covered appropriately. We want to make sure that any project that is done, single family home to solar to deck, that those fees are covered by the permit fee. So we'll be looking at in 2026 to ensure that the hours worked on specific projects cover the project or task completely. So we're talking about zoning compliance letters that we do for properties that are either going to remortgage or sell. There's a lot of things that, and then again, maybe planning board fees, zoning board fees to cover their expenses that would be able to bring more revenue in. So again, there are a variety of items planning and development offices involved with that cost money that cannot be reflected in the budget. These tasks include supporting our residents with any questions, building code compliance, zoning compliance, ensuring compliance with federal, state, and regulatory mandates, and maintaining property standards across the town. This work directly impacts public perception, community safety, and economic development. So, with that being said, you will see an increase in revenue from 65,000 to 100,000 for the year 2026. You'll see a netting total of around $400,000. Twin Ponds is included in that revenue. So there are places of additional possible revenue possible with the Village of Manlius, with shared code enforcement services. If the Village of Manlius does not require code enforcement assistance, which would increase the town revenue, it is possible the budget may decrease by $58,000. As an additional code enforcement officer proposed in the budget may not be required. And I say may, as we are always adjusting to meet the future needs of the town. And that can be 10 years down the line where we have all these developments done and we're reducing our staffing. We have plans and procedures in place that allow us for more efficient compliance, but it's an evolving thing that we're constantly looking at. So for revenue, still on revenue, future projects, Twin Ponds, Garden Park, and then we have within the next 5 years, I have projected 65 total new single family homes. That includes the Hope Lane development, Brandywine, Austin Meadow Drive South, and the finalization of Bishop Brook. Any questions on revenue?
Let me just say all those again, so Bishop Brook.
Austin Meadow Drive South, that'd be 65 new single family homes.
And that's not including if somebody just happens to have property.
Or one of the things that's happening right now on Kirkville Road is a knockdown for a new modular home. So they found it more beneficial to just knock down the old home and put a new modular home on there. Yep.
Yeah, so there'd be probably half dozen more houses.
And then if there is new subdivisions that come through the planning board that could increase, you know, that like 12 lot subdivision isn't much and a 30 lot subdivision isn't much either. And some of those are being done without sewer systems. So it is possible to see more of those. There are still developable lots that people would be looking into to put homes here. So there is a lot of potential still for single family and even multifamily growth within the town. So current budget for 2025 is $332,906, with the proposed budget for 2026, $366,877. You can see that page 4. Decrease expenses, engineer contractual by $7,500. Removal of $30,000 for equipment, which was our EV vehicles. And then standard increases for the part-time code enforcement officer and building safety inspector positions. I do have the carryover from the clerk, but I did increase that clerk salary due to the level of responsibility. We have that being tasked with GIS implementation and assistance with that. And one of the additional items I'm looking at is having them be able to do fees or fines for property maintenance when we go and do our fire safety inspections, or if we go out to a property for a numerous amount of times for a failed building permit, if we have re-inspections for that. So if you fail your framing inspection 3 times, we could start implementing that. as a fine for people.
So that hasn't,
Not right now, we're generally trying to, we're based on education. I've never had someone fail framing 3 times, but. You know, we get to a point where. You're failing it twice. You gotta pass on your 3rd time, but I think the main thing for that is fire safety inspections. Where when we're contracting with the village of Fayetteville and they're having their services, we're losing that. And then just trying to gain quicker compliance when it's outside of our own realm. And even when it is ours, if there's a public assembly, we want compliance for those life safety items. So the next one is increase for full-time code enforcement officer and the creation of the director of planning and development and code enforcement. Normally I want to read this here. I'm respectfully requesting the change of position to director with the proposed salary increase in recognition of my continued service, dedication, and value I provide to the town of Manlius. I'm proud to serve this community and have no desire to leave my position. I build strong relationships with everyone in the town. My kids go to school here. We eat ice cream at the same places. We go out to dinner at the same places. I'm here, I'm vested in this community. The institutional knowledge I have, and then the sense of commitment to the town's long-term goals of development. As a code enforcement officer, we play a critical role in protecting the health, safety, and quality of life within the town, often requiring not just technical expertise, but the ability to work diplomatically with residents, contractors, and developers. The proposed raises reflect both the market value of our work and the town's recognition of the level of professionalism, dedication, and continuity we bring to our position. Investing in employee retention is always more cost effective than recruiting and onboarding, especially in specialized roles like ours. I understand the concern that the proposed raise might seem disproportionate compared to what others are receiving, and I respect the town's desire to treat employees equitably, but fairness doesn't mean treating every position the same. It means recognizing the unique market value, responsibility, and retention risk of each role. The job market for experienced code enforcement officers is extremely competitive right now. Municipalities and private companies across the state are struggling to fill these roles, and many are often offering significantly higher salaries, higher bonuses, and flexible terms to attract qualified candidates. The reality is it's not an interchangeable position. It requires continued New York State certification, experience, sound judgment, and the ability to navigate legal, technical, and community challenges. My request is not about being more important than other employees, it's about aligning my department's compensation with the current market value and reflecting the cost of retention versus replacement. Director of Planning and Development and Code Enforcement. And you'll see that on page 3, where it says director. And it says part-time BSI, which is Building Safety Inspector, part-time Code Enforcement Officer, CEO, full-time clerk, full-time CEO, Code Enforcement Officer, full-time CEO, new.
Tom, I just wanna tell you, like, recently, this summer, I've had more compliments about you and staff, our codes department, and what they're doing in the community. How pleased people are, and like, they look forward to working with codes. Like, maybe you don't hear that in a lot of places, and I feel a lot of disabilities, so thank you so much to all who, staff, yourself for setting the standard around Onondaga County, but probably across the New York State. And I'm happy to support you and your request.
Thank you. Yeah, it's what, I mean, like I said, we all know the same people. I'm in this because I'm going over to my friends' houses that, you know, someone built an addition and then they sell it, and then my friend, your friend, anybody of the residents is moving into these homes. We want to make sure that they're safe, not only for the person moving in, but if you're going over there, that they're safe. So that's the biggest thing for me is life safety, number one. And a lot of it is just education. We do a lot with, and I've spoken here, there's a lot that you can't see within the budget that we're doing, the MS4 regulatory items. I just got off the phone with the DEC regarding wetlands and floodplains, so there's a lot that we do to try and keep the town in compliance with all the other regulatory bodies. And it's just one of those things where it can't really be reflected in budget report. And like I said, I'm here to stay at the town, that's where I am, so I would love to continue to support the town in the long-term growth here.
regard to that, like, you do a report at the end of the year that says, you know. Is there a way that we should be asking for a mechanism for providing an annual report that gets to some of these other kinds of things that's not just required?
I think one of the things that we deal with on a regular basis is just the phone calls for people that don't end up having a building permit, have questions about a neighboring property, have questions about a drainage ditch, and then Rob and I work through it. There's, yeah, those things of like, and then again, a lot of it is when we're dealing with violations, like it can say that we took a dozen people to court during this time span, but it's getting those court summons, the accusatories, going and speaking with the attorneys to making sure that we're treating everybody fairly if they're in a situation where they have an eviction on their hands or any numerous things within that. So I think the phone calls where we truly will exhaust every option, where we want to make sure that the person understands that they know we understand where they're coming from, and that they understand that we've exhausted all the options to get to them where they need to be. Because a lot of the times we might not have something in our tool belt to do to help them. But when we tell them, I've said it numerous times to people, come to the town board meeting and tell you guys that the code officer needs this, right? I get it with, the most recent one has been a rooster on Kirkville Road. I'm like, well, you gotta come. Right now, I can't do anything about that. But if you come, we can change that. If it's a nuisance, get enough people together and we can start looking at that. So I bring that before a lot of people that I don't have the mechanism to change that.
Finally.
No problem. You got it. I'll put it in more than just bullet points, but I'll get, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it would be helpful in terms of the whole thing to keep here for well.
Yeah, normally I do an off the cuff. I'm so versed with it, but I was like, I want to make sure that I get everything into this.
Are there any? You're estimating here that you bring in this person. If that were to happen, are there additional training or other kinds of expenses that would be the same thing if the officer had it, then?
So I would not want to hire anybody that we have to send through training, because I've heard of individuals that have started that and then not been able to pass the 6 courses. So for me, also having that experience of someone who has been in a situation with having to deal on a code side with contractors, having that experience, having some regard to zoning and local laws, I would much rather hire someone that has that certification already. So it is true that municipalities hire and then send people through that as an expense, but I think it's a greater of a risk to hire someone and then have to relieve them and put that money. There is enough money in the annual training that we have here to send them to the annual training that is required by New York State. So we would be able to accommodate that. I did a couple other things. I was speaking with Chief Hildreth. I'm hoping, fairly confident that Village of Fayetteville will send a commitment letter to keeping the fire contract at $12,000 for next year. So that will not increase. There is a couple items under contractual, accessory dwelling unit, annual meeting. Canal Trail, Native American, recognition, GIS, year management. $10,000, that I didn't touch of any of those. The rest of it is pretty straightforward. The only other thing that we could maybe get rid of is MapLink, but I would want to see the successful
Yeah.
implementation of the GIS system before we did that, so I'm thinking that would be a 2027 removal item. But as for that, the rest of this is pretty straightforward. Feeling confident on the $500 for the EV charging. It's very minimal, $500. And then the rest of it is pretty straightforward, again. Day-to-day supplies, the code books. I am working with NISBAC and the state about providing. The state said they're gonna give each municipality one set of code books for next year. Which is a start. Hopefully we can get it, or
They have, like everybody else that's.
for code enforcement officers, yes, that is the New York State building officials, the NISBAC. And I'm a state delegate for our central chapter, so when I go to the state meetings. That is one of the big ones on the state's item, is making sure that, because there's some municipal, right now, one of the things that we're fighting for. With NISBAC at the state level is that there's municipalities that have 30-something code officers within the city, and the state's only saying they're gonna give them one set of books. So, and they don't have the ability to buy 10 sets of code books for each one of their departments. So we are working on that, and where the money comes from or the funding that has been through New York State is something that NISBAC is working on.
Sure.
Yes, I'm the state delegate for the central chapter.
Did you mention anything about working with Fayetteville and Manlius?
Did not mention Fayetteville. I did mention Manlius in there. So I have not. I think we can, if we're gonna expedite those conversations, we can reflect that in the next budget proposal.
Have those conversations advanced at all while I was out there?
No.
No.
I don't know if you, John, have had any other conversations with Hank, but
I'm meeting with
okay.
to talk about, because he was in a town last week, so. To talk about our, I am with them, to kind of relate some of the costs, things like that, but also make sure that they have a plan through to next year to figure out where exactly.
I did see the emails go back and forth a little bit, when I finally cleared up my inbox in the last 2 days, it doesn't sound like. There were enough people in town in Fayetteville to ever like meet, but we should try to do that soon, because that will affect Manlius as well. As we end up moving forward with partnering with both of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense, especially with us looking at our zoning. That we're working with the villages and what, we have almost like a transitional area outside of villages and. What the village has for their codes, and I think one of the big ones now working at the village is their sign code. That they have, and if we could kind of align certain areas with certain signage. So those conversations, I think, would be beneficial if, we had. Joint for police communication with villages for their planning and development.
Yeah, so let's you and I talk tomorrow about getting that going, because we're really running out of time to do that budget season.
I do have a proposed code enforcement officer in there. I think one of the things that will help immensely is if we, I have to get a competent, I have to get a good clerk. I mean, I have right now the budget proposed. Depending on the skill set level that they have, may go up with that, depending on that. I mean, if we're doing advanced GIS assistance with that person, making sure that they're fairly compensated for it. If they're working with Maria for billing and fines, fees, and doing kind of a advanced level clerk's position. Making sure that we're getting someone that is able to actively assist us and help us versus, having a more of just a filing and clerical work.
I was,
I have a couple people that have had resumes and one shown interest, one that I'd have to work with a little bit more in regards to pay. So we haven't put it fully out yet, but we are working towards that end goal of getting someone in here and getting them trained, especially if we get them in during the winter time where it's a little bit slower and be more hands-on.
Is it okay if I ask a question? When is the next test for director? Would it be before the end of the year?
I do not know. I have been patiently waiting for that for about a year and a half. So it would be intern, director. Interim,
Yeah.
thank you. Provisional.
Until the test comes out.
I think we should do that, as I already told you.
Yes,
So you-
I have that proposed to reflect, and I think it's truly how the department should be set up. Where, yes, where there is that position. And it sets a clear direction for, the chain if someone is unhappy with another code enforcement officer or building safety inspector's review or interpretation, it would be brought to myself for review.
That's good.
Thank you.
And I have no issues with taking that test and having the provisional aspect. I've been waiting for it in hopes that I'd be able to come here one budget and say I already have it, but I'm waiting on the county every time they send me the email for the new tests that are coming out.
Is there a way to like let them know you want to take it? Like, will they like, could they
Make a
schedule it?
request, but
Yeah,
it doesn't.
I mean, might
You're
not
gonna
us.
schedule it.
It goes on the test with everybody, question it, and
Yeah.
you're the first in the state to apply with, setting a date, so.
We could at least try that.
Do we slow the middle of our roster?
You want director of, not code, director of planning.
I think it, with the job duties that I have, it encompasses both of them. So I could have both the titles. I could do director of planning and development. I think that one has parts of code enforcement in it. But I think really it's kind of both of those titles and you could add them both.
And I think with all the interest, like you and I talked about this, like with economic development, and with Micron coming and with updating the zoning, there's so much growth that we're experiencing now and that will only to happen. So we've done so much with sustainability, that to fall under that, like that's what DeWitt does. They have that professionalized and there's so much that we could put inside town hall that would come off the town board. Because it would be professionalized in that role, so I think that would make a lot of sense. In terms of what other companies do. And then the code enforcement, the sticky thing. Tricky thing will be finding other code enforcement officers, but we don't know how difficult that is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I gonna make you stay longer?
Come on up.
This might be the most complicated one we have.
You think so?
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't hoping to make it complicated.
Too many notes. The case is, I can't handle it.
Well, thank you to our comptroller Maria Lenway for typing this up and putting it together. Somehow there was some kind of glitch with the program, apparently. I was hoping to get this to you folks earlier, but Maria's been working on it. Was able to type this up and get it to you, so. If you haven't had a chance to look at it or have questions, I'm certainly happy to answer them, but let me kind of go through a few thoughts that I had. First, we're in we have a little bit of a different wrinkle this year. We're taking on the village of Manoa justly. They have a budget of about $41,000 in the village of Manoa to run their court. We figured out we can encompass it. We don't necessarily need to hire extra people. There is gonna be an increased workload, more cases. Obviously, we need to spend more on office supplies. We are gonna have to have court a little bit more frequently than we did this past year, so there is a little bit of an increase for our security costs. We're keeping the hourly pay the same, but we budget that we're gonna need some extra hours due to those court sessions. We're also gonna be taking on files from Manoa. Not just new files, but old files. So there's a storage issue. You folks know that in the past, we've applied for grants through the Justice Court Assistance Program. They weren't really as generous last year as I was hoping they would be. We had asked for some extra file cabinets last year. We got some money, but we decided the door to the courtroom was a more pressing issue in terms of security. We are in the process of having that work done. There's a huge lead time on getting that door, but it has been ordered. That work is going to get done. I thank you folks for giving us the extra money to have that done. We didn't get the file cabinets as a result of this. And now we're going to be taking on some extra files from Manoa. You folks have a better connection with the village of Manoa government than I do, but one thing that might help is if somebody were to talk to them and say, hey, don't just give us a bunch of boxes of files, but give us the file cabinets that the files come in too. Okay,
I can't imagine they need them for anything.
Well, I wouldn't know about that, but I'd like to think that they're gonna give us those cabinets. That would be
We
helpful.
can make that happen.
Okay. Okay, so that's kind of our excellent. That's another issue. Thanks for bringing that up. Obviously, space is at a premium. We'll figure out how to make it work. We'll have to be creative. I don't know if consolidation with other courts is going to take place at some point in the future or not, but I'll tell you this, Manoa is the least busy of the 3 village courts. If we take on others at some point in the future, now might be at a point where I'm telling you, we need to hire some extra staff, but I think we can get this done with Manoa without having to do.
So I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
One, I did not know that we were taking on Manoa. Who else on the board here?
It was out, it was, yeah, we were dissolved or.
When was that?
I would, just to guess, I'd say it was probably in the spring sometime.
They're really quick, it's like, so we think.
Yeah. Okay, and that'll be happening, my understanding is they're being dissolved at the end of March. So we'll be taking on their stuff in April.
Is it possible to digitize those files, or do they have to stay in paper form?
They have to stay in paper form.
How, is that in perpetuity, or is there a time limit?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because I have my erstwhile court clerk, Jeanette Zacharias here, who can probably answer me.
So some of the records are permanent. All your docket books are permanent, docket records.
You need them physically in paper?
Yes. It depends on how a case is closed, on the determination on how long we have to keep. So a misdemeanor conviction is 25 years. A violation is 6 years, and so forth. Civil cases like small claims evictions, those are permanent, those are 50 years. We have to maintain. So,
Are the files that we currently have, the ones that could be digitized, have they been digitized, or?
no, we haven't digitized them.
So they're,
That would be a huge undertaking. for us.
especially trying to figure out which ones could be and which ones couldn't be, like, we have to take it literally case by case.
Yeah.
Is that, if we're running out of space, it might make sense to consider looking at that in the future to get rid
It
of.
might be something that we could look at for a grant, maybe.
Yeah.
Try to see if we can get something to just digitize them or put them in some type of other form.
Yeah, because the space issue going forward, that would obviously help if we didn't have all of that.
So we've been really successful with digitizing in the planning department, a lot of the stuff that we've got downstairs. So maybe the right call, and maybe we do this even before the budget, is do you think we could set up a meeting with Avalon to review what they've got?
Absolutely.
Cause I mean, they were professional, like it was really great. And then maybe we can just kind of see, because they could come in and say it's gonna be 20 grand, they could come in and say it's gonna be 100. You know, look, if I think if we find it out, and then that way too, we can either apply for some grants, or we can start, you know, like for the next budget cycle, make sure that we're budgeting for it, or even budgeting for a portion of it, because by March, we could probably bring them in and maybe free up the space that we need for the Manila files. So if you're willing to set that up, I think that's.
Absolutely.
Okay, no, I
They
think,
weren't asking Manoa too, if by March they could digitize what they have. Well,
Okay.
like rather than bringing it over and giving it for us to do, like perhaps they have capacity or that would take a lot of our plate.
I think that's a good idea.
Does Manila have a clerk?
Yes, they have a part-time clerk.
Would that person want to work for the town?
I don't know the answer to that. At this point, I think we can assimilate their court and their files and everything else without the need for hiring somebody else. But that brings up a good point and something I wanted to address. Some of you may or may not know this, but one of our full-time court clerks has been out on medical leave throughout much of this year. Now, somehow, Jeanette and our part-time clerk, Megan View, I don't know how they've done it. Sleight of hand, perhaps, but they've been able to kind of keep things going without the need for me to come to you and say, hey, could I hire some other people on a part-term basis to come and help out? Again, I don't know how they've done it, but they have. And thanks to them, our court runs smoothly. I don't think, I can't speak for Judge Boyd, but in my opinion, the clerks are the ones that keep the court running smoothly. I just come in for court days and preside over the court session, but they're the ones who answer all the phone calls, deal with all the angry letters, take care of issues upon issues. And for them to have held this place together without one of our full-time workers for a long period of time, it's really miraculous. So they deserve a lot of credit for that. Which brings me to compensation. I think you'd all agree that we've got a lot of really good, hard workers here in the town of Manlius. Our clerks are really about as good as you can ask for. Our full-time clerks have both been doing this for about 30 years or so. They're widely considered to be the best clerks in Onondaga County, and they get phone calls all the time from people in other courts saying, hey, you know, walk me through this, how do I do that? They're very highly respected. So when I took a look at our compensation here, I've done this in the past, but I asked that you keep the judges' raises to a minimum. And I've said, please don't give us a raise at all. Folks have been generous enough to still give us a raise anyway. But again, I'm here saying we're going to keep the judges' raises down to 1%, the cost of living increase. If you would consider giving some extra money to our court clerks, it's not an exorbitant ask. I think we've capped it at 5% for each of them. I also want to talk about Megan, our part-time court clerk, who works on an hourly basis and gets no benefits. And in my view, that's probably the best deal that the town of Manlius could get. She's a bargain. She's been here 10 years. And again, because of her and her willingness to be flexible and cover different hours, we've been able to kind of skate through without asking for any part-time help or temporary help. I had submitted something maybe a month or two ago. I know you folks have been busy with other issues, but I had asked that you would consider giving her 2 weeks of paid vacation. I know that part-time workers typically don't get vacation. I also know that outside of seasonal employees, I think we've only got a couple of part-time workers in the town. We don't have anybody, I don't believe, who's been here for 10 years. 10 years of hourly pay and filling in and kind of helping the court run, being an integral part of it. I think that should be rewarded. If Megan is due to come into work on a Monday or any other day that just so happens to be a holiday, she gets nothing. So I don't think that's something that necessarily costs the town a lot. I think it would be much appreciated. And again, I always am concerned about retention of our employees, specifically in the court clerk world. It's very, very difficult to find people that do this, know what they're doing, and can do a good job. And as I mentioned in the past, there have been a number of issues in past years where court clerks have had some sticky fingers and have stolen quite a lot of money from the till. We had that issue here in the town of Manlius years ago before I came in. And I believe the court clerk in question stole a couple $100,000 and spent a lengthy time in state prison. So we've got some trustworthy folks. I'd like to keep them if we can. I would ask that you consider doing that for Megan. I don't think it sets a precedent that you have to give every part-time worker vacation. Again, I think there's only one part-time worker here with 10 years. And I think it would be the right thing to do if you can see your way clear to doing that.
And she still only wants to be part-time?
She's a part-time worker now. She's got young children. I envision some point she's not here, so I can't ask her. I don't want to put her on the spot, but I would think she would potentially be interested in coming to work for us full-time at some point in the future when her kids are a little bit old.
And the person who's on medical leave, do you anticipate their return at any?
I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful. I know she wants to come back. Beyond that, I just wanted to add a word or two about revenue. Predicting revenue in the courts is kind of a tricky business. The state legislature has kind of taken the teeth out of enforcement of payment of fines. So there's a number of factors, including how many tickets are written by the police, whether people are voluntarily paying. It's hard for me to predict revenue. I do think there probably should be some sort of a bump with Manoa. I don't think it'll be a significant bump. I think we put down 95,000. I think that's a good guess. It's just hard for me to really know that. I know I've mentioned in years past that we don't look to balance the budget through the courts. I know Judge Boyd would agree with that. That's the last thing in the world that we think about. Our mission is to impose a fine in each case that we think is fair under the circumstances. Perhaps, again, if you're looking to increase revenue through the courts, some local ordinances might be helpful. I know we've talked about that in the past, but folks have been busy with a bunch of other issues as well. But just a reminder that that's a potential option if you're looking to generate some revenue through the court system. Beyond that, folks, I really don't have a lot. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes.
You asked about the 2 weeks paid vacation request.
Yes.
That, so just to clarify, so she'd probably have time 20 hours a week?
That's correct.
So we would consider 40 hours average.
That would be yes, that's what I would ask you to do. I think she's budgeted for exactly what you said, 20 hours a week.
Yes,
It's a week.
40, 20, it's usually the whole year, so,
Yeah.
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 You're good.
That's right.
So in terms of court dates, I know that my observation, which is not percent, is that sometimes you guys come in a little earlier and you do some of the remote work or whatever, and then you still regular work. Do we anticipate, are the days that you have working, with there be other days, are there other weeks, like, do you anticipate either because of increased volume with Manoa or just the way things are with some people being remote, some people not? Also, if there's anything going on with like Justice Center getting people back transported here. Do you think there should be any changes or is this?
No, I don't think so. What we do with our court nights is they're usually a blended virtual and physical in-person appearance. We might have to have some extra court days. It's hard to predict, but if we had a trial or a hearing or something unusual, I had a jury trial a few years ago that required us to start court like on a random Thursday morning at 9 o'clock in the morning. Now, it hasn't happened since then. It could happen next week. I just don't know. But no, we try to handle cases for incarcerated individuals virtually, so we don't have transport deputies having to haul people back and forth when we can. Sometimes we do need to bring them out, but when we can, we try to take advantage of virtual options.
It's more efficient for everybody.
I think it is. Yeah. Other questions?
Are you having any issues getting court officers regularly, or are we?
We're doing pretty well. We've got 2 folks that are here on a regular basis. We do have a backup person as well. There have been, what do you say, 1 or 2 nights perhaps in that where we've only had 1.
Right,
Which
the other is not available.
when somebody's not available, that's certainly not optimal to only be operating with 1 security person. But it hasn't happened often.
No, and we've tried to find other individuals, but there's nobody out there that
We haven't identified it.
Yeah,
Another option.
This is a challenging position.
Yeah.
It is, and a few years ago, you folks were good enough to, at our request, to bump up the compensation and try to get some more qualified people. Frankly, if you know, we're not asking you to increase that pay rate now, I don't think increasing it a couple bucks here or there really would make a huge difference in terms of having a deeper pool of available people.
Yes.
Nobody
Thank you very
else?
much.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you, folks.
Thank you for all you've done with the extra work.
Well, if anybody needs to go to the bathroom, feel free to do that. Hallelujah.
You want me to just be there?
Yeah, sure, go for it. Hold on.
Oh, okay,
Sorry.
let me know.
Yeah, ready, great.
I've been waiting on.
I'm here.
We're all set.
Now you're on.
The best for last, right? So anyway, first of all, thank you guys, for giving us the opportunity here to present today. Just want to first of all thank Monica Benock and my secretary, who's gone way out of her way again this year. She started, I know we started back in June. I'm actually transferring everything over from last year in the previous years, so. So actually, I just want to thank her. I want to thank Bob. Bob's actually doing a great job as far as catching on to all of this information. So Bob's played a pretty good part in this particular budget. So hopefully in the future, he should have a good grasp of this anyway. So I asked him to kind of sit in so he can throw his information out there in case I forget anything here. So as usual, I'll walk down through everything here as quick as I possibly can. If you've got questions you want to ask during the presentation, feel free, or at the end, you want to go back, however you're comfortable with. So anyway, we'll open right up with budget for superintendent and the secretary and the deputies of, highway superintendents. Pay, John, you obviously had mentioned about the 3% for all non-unions, so we put that in. So we're looking at, Bob is gonna stay at that 85,000 as we agreed to when we brought him on. So we've got basically a 1.92% increase across the board there. I think that's actually a little bit less than what we anticipated to begin with. As far as the contractual, the only thing that we actually up there is a little bit for conferences and seminars. So that way Bob will be allowed to go to those next year too. So we can kind of grasp on what's going on. So that's pretty much with the A transportation fund. Moving into the building, the A building. So these are the three funds that we have been putting some money into these accounts. One would be for the salt storage facility. Obviously, we put 5,000 into it last year. I proposed putting another 5,000 in this year, so when, we do need to do the upgrades, and if someone runs through the door of the building, or we have lighting issues or any of those types of things, we can take that money right out of that particular fund. So the building and maintenance, again, we've got the 5,000 on that, and then you see the HAR, Highway Additions Renovations Fund. So we'll put this is basically somewhere where I want to throw out at this board, because it may not happen under me. But the fuel tank system at that facility is pretty much the end of its lifetime. It's got a steel tank inside a concrete vault. The concrete vault is already leaking as far as water going into it. I assume probably within the next 3 to 4 years, we're gonna have to do a major renovation with our fuel system. So it's about 25 years old now. So if we get a couple more years out of it, I'd be really surprised. So I did go out and get a quote. The quote is not a cheap quote to replace the existing diesel system. But when I did it on the assumption that we may possibly be doing a police department, a new department, or at a town hall, where most municipalities have gas and diesel at the facilities, so that both could fill up. So the quote that we got is right around the $300,000 mark, and that would be to upgrade to a larger tank that would supply the 10,000 gallons of diesel fuel. It would also be able to put gas there, so the police department would be able to still be able to get gas at our facility instead of having their above ground tank at their facility, where they're constantly, I think every week they're getting fuel. Where we would be able to get them fuel on a lot quicker or longer basis. They wouldn't have to get fuel every
How many gallons we got?
So I think we looked at a 10,000 gallon diesel fuel, and I think a 2,000 gallon gas. Gas, you can't keep as much around, it doesn't last as long. So the assumption would be a 2,000, which is probably bi-weekly for a refill for them. And again, that's all the actual fuels were off the state contract, so, but and I believe that the upgrades to the system would be a contract from the state too, so I believe that's all under the state contract.
Around that, the gasoline, storage is also figured.
So that's into that total amount, and we went high. I went way high, right? So I said, here, throw me an estimate. Not even, just throw it out there for now. What's this gonna be? If I did this tomorrow, where would be? Now, we have some options. We could go 2 pump system, single pump system, where one would be for gas, one would be for diesel, or just put both of them on the same pump. Those are options. There's gonna be different options and sizes of the tank and what we use for tanks. So I told him to give me the Cadillac, right? Where are we gonna be if this is what we were doing next year? Because I just wanted to throw a number out, and I don't know if Monica actually sent that along or not. Sir, I know, John, you've seen it.
Yeah, we've got.
I can get that to the board. It's just, again, it's a quote that's that's out there. It's not something that I anticipate on doing next year, but that's something certainly I wanted to make sure the board aware of. So that's why I put the $10,000, and I think if we don't do it, we might as well at least start putting some money away for the next 3 or 4 years to reduce that cost that it's gonna cost eventually down the road. So anyway, get into the building contractual, there's really not much change there. We did put about $3,500 more in for the new GIS system. I think, John, we had talked about a couple of different licenses. So that would cover us, and I'm hoping that that will cover us. And then help, offset the cost of that program. Let's see here, so the rest of it's pretty much the same. We've got a little bit of decrease in the garage building maintenance. And you're gonna say, Rob, well, we're getting to do new upgrades to the garage, so why are you cutting that? So those building maintenance with the DC and the garage building maintenance things were for like the overhead doors, all that kind of stuff. We're gonna have a lot of new stuff, so we're gonna have to worry about that bigger cost. We only spent this year, we spent, I think, about 9,000 at this point. So I don't anticipate anything crazy happening, so I think it's fair enough to say we could drop that down to about 15,000 next year. So other than that, on that line or on those lines, I don't really see anything else crazy. The maintenance contracts, we ended up dropping that a little bit, this year. We don't have the same maintenance contracts we had 4 or 5 years ago. We're down to about 2 or 3 because the rest of them we're doing ourselves now. Horn welding, I believe, is one of the big ones that we've got. And then the fire extinguishers, when they come in, and do all the inspections of our fire extinguisher. I think those are the only 2 that we're actually doing a maintenance contract with it anymore. So we'll move ahead. Unless anyone's got any questions on that. The next page just kind of shows everything that was there. We're still using the same GPS units with 21 units. The cost for our internet, cost for the OTC you see there, and the 675 for the international trucks. Those are all where our mechanics are using to read all the codes that are on these vehicles. And they're proprietary, so we have to have, each year you pay a licensing fee to use those for diagnostic tools. And then the GIS system itself, we put in the 2,000 again for that, for the licensing fee for the GIS system. So that just shows how that whole last page went. So moving ahead into the new equipment, and I want to remind the board, over the past 15, 20 years that I've been doing this budget. So we've had that, remember, equipment on the winter side, and then we would have the new equipment line underneath the machinery. So this year you see there's a flip flop because we're not buying a lot of winter equipment. We're buying basically a payloader, which is a high ticket item. So I've gotten a quote or an idea of where we are for trade-in value, but I didn't put it in here. I put it on the revenue side. So you're looking at $140,000 to replace the 644 loader that we have. 645. What's that? About 340. I'm sorry, 345, correct. And then we have the 75,000 for cabin chassis for a 350 cabin chassis. And again, those are both state contracted. So we'll be pulling those off the state contracts. And I'll show you where the equipment for the cabin chassis for the winter equipment once we get to the winter fund. So that's why you see the increase from the 258 to 420 there, because you've got the large expense of the payload there. But again, I anticipate around a $45,000 trade-in value from ours. So anyway, the truck car repair, as you guys know, that every year it just seems to be going up. It's just the cost of us doing business with our contractors. Everything is, a lot of it is emissions related. Where we have issues with these vehicles and we just can't do the work on the emission stuff. So anyway, you'll see the tire repair that shows up like 3 times in this budget. I think you guys are pretty well aware of how I do that. Basically the DA, the DB, and brush and weeds. we'll have three different categories of what we purchase tires out of. Because of the way the budget allows, that's why it's there, but there's really very little increase in any one of those, they're all under 2%. In any of those accounts, again, with equipment repair, we're looking at about a 6.8%. So that's where one of your increases is gonna be in this overall budget. So this is the first time you actually see payroll, with the brush and weeds. Again, we still do this for 2 weeks of the year. We do payroll out of that, and then we do birthday, for an average of 13 to 15 guys. So we figure that for the overtime and with that. So that's at the, you're going from 57,000 to 59,009, from 25 to 26, so it's not a huge increase. It's about $2,800, but it looks more as far as the percentage goes. But again, we did a 4% increase contractual with the employees, so it's the first time you're actually seeing it in the budget. Other than that, everything else on the contractual, the fuel's the first time you've seen that too, and that's budgeted at 4.25. I left that alone from last year on the diesel side. Again, I'm giving you worst case scenario. We certainly can look at that number. I think I've had the conversation with John and Sarah both. If we're willing to gamble, taking that down to 4 or 3.75, somewhere along in there. That's the determination of the board, but I'm giving you worst case scenario here. Anyway, other than that, I don't see anything else really for the big increase there. Again, the 4% on the payroll, so that would bring that up to 3.15% overall. The next page just shows how we came up with each guy in the budget and what the payroll will be. So it's the first time you see the 40-hour a week and the amount per man. Again, that's nothing out of the ordinary that I've done that every year. So we're into the winter. So this one's gonna be a big one. Again, you'll see how we did the 4% increase in payroll for personnel. You'll see how we took the amount for overtime and for double time for holidays, weekends, Sundays. So we took that same formula I've used every year. And if you see in the gray area there, we actually still show the inches. Last year, the first year, we had that 120.9, so we average about 120 over a 10-year span. We're down a little bit, I think, in the last 4 or 5 years, but that certainly usually is the trend. So the contractual there, you'll see the CDL licensing that is required by union contract. We know we've got about 5 different guys that are gonna need to get paid their CDL licensing. So that's in there. This year's a little bit of an upput in that, about we're talking about $50, but it shows a 4.9% increase. So again, it's not a lot of money. Again, we're looking at the diesel fuel in the winter. Back at 4.25. Again, that's something the board wants to look at. I certainly would be more than happy to have a conversation with you about it. Cell phones, there is a little bit of an uptick in cell phones. Bob, which we put on our account. So Bob now has got the cell phone also. So it didn't go up, what, $231 a year. Is basically what that went up. Let's see here, the material salt, clear lane, so that's everything that we do. So John was there actually when I called the county to get a contract number from them. So the number that we got from last year to this year, I wanna make sure I got it right. So we went from 2024 to 2025 season, the spring or the spring of this year, we were paying $50.28. This year it went up $60.97. That's for regular. For treated, it went from 73.05 to 74.53, and that's for Cargo. We had American Rock Salt was our contractor last year. So Cargo went out and bid this year for the Onondaga County and the Cuba County contracts. And those are the numbers that we're going to be going with this year. With that being said, we sat back and we looked at this and we said, Well, we looked at this year's budget 24-25, and we were at the 9,000 mark, meaning in tonnage. So after the 9,000 mark, we're into the 10% overage, and then after that, it's 20%, and then they don't have to give us any salt at all. You guys know what happened last year with the salt shortages. So what happened was, a lot of guys don't do a 10-year average, we do. So they did like a 2 or 3 year average, and the problem is that all of a sudden it was January and they were into the 10% already. So I've never been able to, I've never put myself in that situation. We don't get charged for telling them we're going to need more. So I went back and looked at our averages. So we're gonna go from 9,000 to 11,000 of regular salt, and then 1,000 of the treated salt, which is, we usually use around 800 of the treated January, February, when it gets real cold.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Where does salt come from?
Salt comes from underneath the lakes, believe it or not. Underneath, where most of it's pulled is underneath the lakes. American rock salt's right here in, Ithaca. It's right underneath Ithaca Lake. They've got huge mines that run right underneath the lakes. They're like mile and a half underneath. So, but a lot of them will pull like, you get, companies that like from Peru and stuff, they barge it in like to Albany. And some will come into Erie County too. They'll grab them from the ocean, they'll grab from the bottom, you know what I mean? It's actually a little different color salt, and you'll get it from there. It's almost pinkish colors. But a lot of this, they went back on their contract. The state of New York put a Buy American Act out back last year, I don't know if you remember that. And the problem with that is we couldn't, when I say we, the state, meaning people in Albany, people in Buffalo, got the stuff barged in before, couldn't do that any longer. They had to buy from American Rock Salt and Carpets, the only two mines in the state of New York. Or you could go out in the Midwest and try and get it out of one of those places, but the cost was so much to get it delivered. They didn't. So you had a company that had 30% of the contract, all of a sudden had 90% of the contract last year. And we actually had an average winter, so they couldn't get enough up out of the ground quick enough to get it to us.
So there
So-
wasn't like a true shortage and like the salt was gone, it was just we couldn't get it quickly enough out of the ground.
That's exactly what happened. And it wasn't just here, it happened in Pennsylvania, it happened in a lot of other states. Problem is the Buy American Act, what the state government put it into, they put it on pause. They wanna look at it a couple of different years to see what's happening. Because again, you're not getting a fair shake at the number. If you're trying to get it from Canada, which some guys do, there's different contracts, or Peru or other foreign countries where they actually barge it to us. So we basically, that's where the shortage came in. We just didn't have enough up out of the ground to handle what we were doing in the state of New York.
And we weren't allowed to go get it from other countries.
So what happened was the last year is they raised their rates so high at the end, when everybody was starving for it, that people were paying twice the amount per ton for salt, which we never got into. Matter of fact, John and I and Sarah, we had all talked at one point about what we were gonna do. I mix sand with mine, and then I'm actually the one to talk to the county about it. We need to mix, I mean, it's just one of those deals where we need to mix the sand. And I know it's a cost for cleanup, and we all do that going in. We all handle that cost this spring. It's not the normal way that everyone would do it, but it kept us from all getting into situations where the roads became hard packed, so, anyway, with that all being said, basically, I've upped our rates as far as what we're going to try and order this year. Again, I'm giving you worst case scenario. The boards in the past have always looked at it and said, well, maybe we'll gamble a cut it. That can be done.
So I will say, when I was talking with Rob and Bob last week, one of the things that we could do, because in DA, we have a very healthy fund balance.
Correct.
And we tried to even get it down last year.
Right.
So one of the things that we could very comfortably do is increase the cost, but not actually budget for the additional salt that Rob's looking to bring in.
Right.
Understanding that if we do get there, we have a perfectly reasonable amount of fund balance to pull that from.
Right.
As opposed to putting it in the budget, the increased amount, and then we don't use it, and then we're just throwing it back into fund balance.
Right.
And that's been it's well in line with a lot of the feedback we've had from the comptroller's office with the AFR of how they'd like to see the budget look.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, it
I
would.
can tell you, previous boards, they've done that,
Yeah.
right? You know what I mean? But keeping in mind, just off the top of my head here, I'll throw the number, 1,000 ton, basically is $60,000. You know, so you're looking at a reduction of 1,000 tons, roughly $60 or 60,000. With that number that we're using now. So again, I'm giving you the worst case scenario, because that's my job, right? I'm telling you.
The other, so that is in terms of the negotiation with the salt supplier,
Right,
is to still go with the 11.
right,
So that we're not penalized if we do go.
exactly,
We,
sir.
we discussed, there's no penalty for.
There is no penalty. Now, if you're on the state contract, the state contract requires you to take 80% regardless.
Okay.
So you're paying for 80%, whether you use it or not. If we don't use it, we don't get any penalty for it. So that's why if you have an easy year, then otherwise you'd have to take that 80%. So that's why I opted to do what we did, went upped it a little bit. And then again, I expect the board will look at it. And again, I would more than happy to have that conversation. If we need to, if we want to do a reduction, if I feel that we're going a wrong direction, I certainly would let you know.
And
But I'm giving you my averages. I'm giving you the highest number I can to work off of, in fairness to all of the residents.
And just as a point of reference, the increase to. Well, let's just say the whole winter expenses in this, the budget that Rob's presenting to us, basically 103,000.
Yep.
If we simply didn't budget for the additional salt,
Right,
that would actually bring us to then its reduction.
right.
Because of one of the other lines, going down by 167.
Yep.
So I think perfectly reasonable, and again, we have the money, we don't need to.
So that's where you'll see, John, and when we got into the equipment, this is where I'm talking about the winter equipment for that car. We can actually move down to that because last year we had $185,000 now because we bought one plow package last year for a 6-wheeler. Where this year we're only putting a plow and a flatbed sander on a 550. So it's only $18,000. When I say only, I mean that respectfully, that it's a lot different from what we were spending last year. But looking on the other machinery side, we're spending $340,000. You know what I mean? So it does even out when you look at the total overall budget. Again, you'll see the tires there. There's about a 3% increase, but that would be for all winter tires on these trucks. You know, but each year we're going to take a certain percentage and change them out. It's just, you know, you're going to pay in the beginning, or you pay when you blow a tire in the middle of the winter and you're out there trying to change it. So I don't know if there's any more questions on the winter stuff. I'll move on. Again, the next page just kind of shows you a worksheet and how I calculated the salt, the plow sticks, everything involved. Just going back a little bit, if you were to take everything outside of salt that's in that you know, the calcium, the sand, the plow sticks, the snow fence, if we took that out of that line, it's about a 14% increase just for the salt alone. When you add in what we added additionally and everything else into it, you're looking at about a 30% increase overall. And again, it's only because of you've added on, you know what I mean, a number. So that kind of just shows you what we did and what we came up with and how we came up with the numbers. Again, I don't think there's anything that's unexplainable there, so. The next page, again, just shows our averages on the worksheets for the salt usage. Over the last 6 years, we've had 79.46 inches of snow. So the same road mileage is basically there. We're probably going to be doing a little bit of addition to this year. We've got a couple new roads that we're going to be probably putting on our inventory this year from new subdivisions that we didn't do last year. So we'll be putting those on. So again, the graphs just kind of show the story of the usage per year. We're right along that same line, actually a little bit of a reduction over the last probably 8 or 9 years. And then you'll see where the average cost has gone. The average cost was down and then jumped up in 23 and then been going ever since 24 and 25. It's gone up. Again, nothing we're going to control. This all comes down to supply and demand, basically. So the next one's just a worksheet of personnel for the overtime. I think everyone's pretty sure how we did the overtime. We take the 26 weeks, actually, the next page actually shows it even better. It shows you how far we go back. We go back to 2009. And the average of overtime we took out of those, that 10-year period. And I took the highest, of course, which was the 8.53. And we do that, times 24 weeks per man. Which gives us the 996,181. Which I'm trying to see the difference in last year's to this year's, where are we here? I don't know if it'll show on that one, but probably show the next page. We look at the next one. So we did the same with the double time, the same averages. We took the 1.52% per man. Again, for the amount of Sundays that we use and the amount of holidays and weekends. It comes out to the 1.52 hours per man. I'll just keep moving to the next sheet there. You've got the worksheet with the overall budget. So the top one, you'll see that the 12 truck plow package. That's in this year's budget, the 25 budget. I anticipate on using that. I'm hoping the equipment will be in by the end of the year. If not, the reason why I left it there is we may have to encumber to next year. So that's why I kind of left that there. And then you'll see with the 3-ton cabin chassis for the three truck, the 75,000 for the cabin chassis and the 18,000 for the equipment and body. And then that 644 payloader at the 345, which gives you the grand total of the 438. So that's the combination of both winter and summer of equipment. The next page is just the summary of where we were from 2015 to current. And that's on our equipment repair expenses. It's kind of an interesting story to look at. You see where we had our opening balance in 2015 was 86,000, and our opening balance now is at 142. And that's just simply because it's costing us more to do what we're doing per vehicle. And also it's interesting that we had used about 63% of the percentage at the time of year when we did the one in 2015, and we're at 63% of it used in 2025. So again, those are just numbers for you guys to look at. It kind of shows the story of what our increases have been in the repairs. The next sheet is for a DA. It's for a fund balance for the debt services, which right now we have no debt services. The only time I can remember doing a debt service out of DA was we purchased an Aquatech. We actually bought the cabin chassis under the machinery, and then the equipment that we put on it, we actually did that in a bond. I think it was a 10 or 15-year bond that we paid a little bit early, but that's what that was for. So moving on to the summer. Again, straight time, double time, all that's contractual. So the number there went up from 754 to 790. Again, that's 26 weeks, 24 in the summer, and then the 2 for the brush and weeds, the payroll. Looking down through here, the diesel again, I left at 4.25, and I won't belabor that any longer. You'll see an increase in the shop chemicals, the asphalt releasing agent. So that's not a cheap date. You're looking at about $800 to $900 a barrel. And it's all soybean based, so we can't use diesel fuel or anything like that anymore. The years back, we were able to spray the boxes down and the equipment down with that. We can't. So we added a couple of barrels to that to get us through the summer season. So that you'll see the increase in that. And that's under the share, about $1,100 difference. It's probably 2 barrels. That's what we're going up there. Safety training went up just a tad bit. It looks like there's a huge percentage. It went up $200. But I've got a lot of new guys we've hired over the last few years. So just keeping up with the safety training is required. Blue Troll's still doing all of our stuff for us. So he comes in and does all of that. The road and road repair for asphalt. That's typically, I'm sorry, I'll go back to the contractual. So contractual, we went up about 1.96%. That's all the contractors that we use. This year we have to be second stone, happens to be contractor for doing our in-place, milling and paving, other than what we're doing. Because we're still one of the last towns in Onondaga County, one of the last three that we're actually still doing our own paving. And we're still saving money doing it, so, unfortunately, I think a lot of municipalities just can't get the crews to do what we do. So that's why they've opted out to use contractors all the time. I know for a fact in DeWitt, Rocco's a good friend of mine, and he just doesn't have the guys to do his paving anymore, so he's contracting more and more out each year. Signs went up a little bit, about $300. Just the cost of the materials, you know, you all know we have our own sign repair, sign shop. We just buy the materials and we're able to do our own signs right in-house, where most municipalities are out purchasing signs by whatever the need is there. Other than that, I'm trying to look to see the road paint, that was contractual, so that went up $450, but that was all part of the contract, off the state contract. Drainage and catch basins, we did go up a little bit. Remember, this is anything outside the districts. So this is the stuff that aren't in drainage districts, the stuff that we typically do through the highway department. So each year the cost of risers and catch basins and all of the concrete is going up. So we increased that up a little bit this year. Again, that's about, it shows 7%, it's $3,000 on what we were allowed here was at 46,000, we're at 49 this year. Let's see, personnel worksheets. Again, that's just showing the sheets of where they are for the longevity pay, our rate of pays for the summer. We do add a little bit of overtime in for in case of a storm situation, a Labor Day storm, right, those types of storms, so we put a little bit of overtime in the course of the year. So there's really not anything we had control of. Again, it was that 4% increase that we did for the contract. So again, that next page, if you go through, it'll show where that truck I talked to you about with the equipment. I'm hoping we don't have to do this, but I left it in here just to show Maria down the road that if we've got encumbered, that's what we're doing. We're encumbering that plow package, and hopefully we won't have to do that this year. So the next worksheet kind of shows the four accounts that we talked about at the beginning of this, with the self-storage facilities with the 5,000, the building maintenance for 5,000, and then the HR or HAR, which is the additions and renovations. We're putting in $10,000, and again, that was just for the fuels, the new fuel system. So I did show a 3-year. Normally I do a 5-year equipment replacement schedule forecast. It's getting more difficult, and I was trying to explain to Bob, for year to year, for us to come up with a cost of replacement schedule, it's getting way more difficult, because the fact is we can't get the equipment as soon as we thought we would, right? Well, we got trucks that were 3 years ago we ordered, so it's getting harder and harder. But we did put a forecast together until 2028. It'll probably change between now and then, but the board will certainly be aware of it when we go to the next couple of budgets down the road. But if you look, you see we're at 420 now. Boom, we go to 2027, it's $835,000. It's just not possible. We're not gonna do that. But I had to put it there. So that'll move down to 20, you know, some of that will have to move to 2028, and then 2028 will move to 2029. So again, it just kind of gives you an idea of where things are headed in the next 4 to 5 years. So if you look at the last, second to last page here, this is a summary page, which kind of tells everything I've just talked about. Basically comes down, looks at my pay and Monica's and Bob's, did a 1.73% increase overall. The garage contractual is at a 9.11. The total equipment is going to be look like it's way more than it really is. That's because of the large expense of the loader at 29.94%. But last year, there's gonna be a huge difference because we didn't have that in there last year. The brush and weeds is about a 3.15%. Snow removal, again, with the contract, you're looking at 5.12, and that's with the increase of the salt. And then you look at the summer stuff, the general repairs, you're up less than 3% there. So total overall, you're looking at about a 6.45% increase. And with that being said, again, we had a 4% increase in pay. We had almost a 14% increase in salt, and we had an increase in equipment purchases. So, again, that's about as tight as I can see this getting. I beat it up relentlessly. So, Bob, did I miss anything good? Different. I got it all.
You're okay to.
So anyway, the last page is the anticipated revenue side. Again, I show here where we do our chips, which has gone up a little bit, when we anticipated going up into 2026. The paved New York, the pothole and the extreme winter recovery are also, they're roughly, I leave those the same because you just don't know what you're gonna get from year to year, with extreme winter. So we do know what we're gonna get for the contract for plowing of county roads. So that went up about $3,000. With the vehicle sales, including the $40,000 that I'm anticipating getting back from the pay order for our trade-in. We're looking to trade in 2, possibly 3 vehicles for another 40,000. And then you've got our interest on the DADB. In the sales of our scrap, we have a dumpster out back. We take all our street signs and any metals that we pick up goes into that. At a total of $661,920. So that's the good side. The anticipated revenue side is up a little bit from last year. So hopefully that offsets some of the costs of the actual budgets. All right, they get you out of your time enough to eat.
Just as a side note to what we were talking about with the salt, if we make that adjustment, the budget increase gets a lot closer to 4%.
Yep.
So it's a good hit, a very reasonable way for us to do it, and I'll be honest. When we, as we get a little further and we consider the actual fund balance that's in there, it might make sense to budget with less salt. Than that and maybe even bring it over. Okay, so that'll be something that.
And the same with the fuel, John. I didn't figure that in there. But again, if you look at that fuel cost. When we get closer into the end of the budget season, when you're tying things up, let's get an average number where they're at right now. You just never know. I mean, winters that can go up real high and then they'll come back down in the spring. It's just, I use an average, right? So, again, when we get a little bit closer, we want to look at those numbers a little bit closer. I'm more than happy to get you those. So we'll go from there.
I think, we all appreciate the long range of the averages and the snowfall figure. It's pretty, you know, we've all lived here, but we don't have to pay attention to
Sure.
how much variation there is. And, you know, one ice storm can make a difference.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't understand when you have those freezing rainstorms, we're out there the same amount of times it would be to do a 6-inch snowstorm, right? So it's sometimes even more, because it's so slippery. So, those get costly throughout the course of the year. So again, all that's done off averages and how many times we go out a year and the overtime and everything's done off of averages. I've talked to several highway superintendents across the state of New York. And there's not really many other ways of doing it other than go off of averages. We're gambling, it's not gonna snow and we never know, you know what I mean?
Well,
So,
that the graph of the salt usage, it shows you why we had an issue this year. Well, it showed why the community had an issue and we
yeah,
well positioned.
yeah,
Because I mean, we were in talking to other folks. I mean, there were people that like they barely bought any salt and didn't order it. So
right.
again, like it's really. It can't be understated how much the preparation of this budget and the data that goes into it really puts us in just the best position.
And I will say on the state contract side too, I was on the state contract for many, many years here. Which at that time was cheaper than the actual county contract, so I'm kind of glad the county has gone out and did their own bids. And they've actually gone with Q accounts, so both counties are bidding at the same time on the same contract. So that certainly has helped us over the years because it does become a problem. You're trying to take 80% of the salt in a light year. You know, so it does, there's definite issues, so. Okay.
Questions?
The employee put up, like, who's that are in front of us right now, are they going to be in minutes or online or how do general public?
So what we'll do is, as we get for the second workshop too, I'll go in and we'll adjust the budget page to have all of these
Okay,
versions of the budget. And then,
because these are not it, but just for the
Yeah.
public, if they're following along, you. and so.
you'd have to get everything added on, because then I'll wait till after the next budget workshop, when we have everything, and then we'll go through it again.
But I think it's important for people to realize that these are proposals from the department and not the budget that is actually
Right.
going to be produced by the supervisor.
See if we can get a big flashing light on the page, these are not final budgets.
Some watermark plans and
Yes.
draft.
Exactly.
But I think it's helpful for people who are wondering, like, what do we spend our money on? To be able to see.
Yep.
Particularly in the detail that's provided. to us.
Okay,
Thank you very
thanks, guys.
We stay?
Avatar.
We, fine.
Two birds in a water.
I would.
No, I don't have any.
Oh, oh, perfect. I was just asking if we needed a motion. So that is the end of the first budget workshop. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again